Hi, this is Ted at Valley the Dolly. Today I wanted to talk with you about some of the things that have changed in Portugal since I arrived 3 years ago. So granted, when I arrived, we were in the middle of the COVID pandemic around the world, and obviously things were much different than they are now. But let's talk about some of the other changes that have happened in the country since I've arrived. The first is CEF. So CEF was the Foreign and Border Services Organization. This is the organization that is responsible for processing of all the visas, all the applications for everybody who's looking to come into the country of Portugal. Now, this is very important for a lot of Americans who especially were looking to come in before the end of this year, and they were wondering exactly what was going to happen with the program now that CEF was going away and it was being replaced by what appeared at first as one organization, but in essence it was dispersed to 7 different organizations. So if it was police related, it was sent either over to the PSP, the GNR, or the PJ. Those are 3 different police divisions inside the country. If it was related to inspectors, those were generally sent over to the tax authority. If it was related to administrative issues, this went over to the Institute of Registration and Notary Offices. And then the predominant bulk of actually processing all of these applications went to a group that was formed, and this is called the Agency for Integration, Migration, and Asylum. And this has taken over what is currently 300,000 applications for people looking to come into Portugal. So if you're in the US and you're looking to come to Portugal, then you'll understand that right now this new organization is in charge of processing over 300,000 applications. If this article is correct, that is a lot of applications for a country of only 10 million people. So you'll understand if maybe there are some slight delays in getting this processed. But a lot of the reason that people are looking to do this is, whether it be in the United States or the UK or other places around the country, they may be looking to get these processed before the end of the year, for example, before some of the other policies that are being changed, and those changes take effect. The second one I thought was really interesting, and this is just a really small, simple one, but they put in place in April something called a VAT holiday on essential food items. So these were an elimination of the VAT tax on some things like meat, on fish, on dairy, and on bread. And for example, if you went into the grocery store and I looked at a name brand 4-pack of yogurt, it may be about €2 last month. And when I went in last week, all of a sudden it was €3, so a 50% increase. So I'm guessing this must not have qualified for the essential VAT holiday. So yes, you could still get a house brand for under €2 for that 4-pack. But to me, that was an example of how effective something like that holiday can be. So maybe this was changed prematurely, or maybe that's just a sign of something that was considered essential. But this is a program that is anticipated to cost the Portuguese government €140 million before it's done. And this VAT holiday on essential food items is expected to end at the end of the year. So it will run apparently for 8 months in total. The next one is a change in the policy for renting apartments. And this has caused a lot of interest and a lot of activity online in groups and in videos. And they talk about this because rents were increasing very quickly in Portugal, and especially in Lisbon and Porto. So a rule in 2023 came into effect, and this limited the amount you were allowed to raise rent to by just 2%. So before the 2% rule went into effect, you found a lot of landlords rushing out to make sure that they tried to get rents raised as much as possible before this rule took effect. So if your rental agreement was ending or anywhere close to ending, they were coming to you and telling you, we want a 30, a 50, a 60% increase in the rent. And I think it shocked a lot of people, and it probably shocked the landlords as well, that they felt that they needed to run over and do this, so quickly. And it caused kind of a rush, and it's caused kind of a stampede in people looking for apartments and concerned about the cost. But with the implementation of the 2%, it now will limit how much landlords can raise the rent. But as soon as almost no sooner did this get implemented, then they're now looking at altering it. And this new change will allow for rent to increase at a rate that also accounts for inflation. So they're talking about allowing rents to go up by as much as almost 5.5% a year. So this is saying, hey, we want to be able to raise the rent at about the rate of inflation. We don't want to be forced to rent an apartment to somebody and then find that the real rental price after you incorporate inflation continues to drop. They want it to at least be level with inflation. And this would allow landlords to make the necessary improvements to the units without feeling like it was an ever decaying value for rent that they were able to charge. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens with this. It's quite possible before the end of the year you're going to see this change in the rental policy. But either way, rents now are kind of capped at how much you can increase those rents, and once they're registered with the country. So this is also part of this Mais Habitação program that was implemented, the goal being to bring more units available on the market, and part of this is done through the limiting the amount you can increase in rent, but also to encourage people who currently own an Airbnb unit. A landlord is given a tax incentive for transitioning that Airbnb to a long-term rental. So for a number of years, they won't have to pay taxes on this if they move it from an Airbnb, a short-term rental, into a long-term rental. So they're incentivizing landlords to, hey, stop, take a second, look at if you really want to continue renting this as a short-term rental, and we're going to make it advantageous for you to make this a long-term rental. So that will bring more units onto the market. They've also requested that vacant units around the country be put on the market. So if they find that you have a vacant unit that's just sitting there, they will request and pressure you to put that unit on the market as well. So they're trying to make every available unit open and available for rent. The other thing they're doing with Airbnbs is they're requiring you to go in and get a license every 5 years. So there's kind of a moratorium going on the number of licenses being issued now, and also, especially in Lisbon, for example, and then also you have to go back and you have to register again. If you sell your property, the Airbnb license, as I understand it, does not go with your property. So you would, once you sell the property, it's not going to be an Airbnb anymore. There are also requirements that other people in the building, if they object to your unit being an Airbnb, can shut that down as an Airbnb. So there's a lot of changes coming about to make more units available. And that kind of feeds into the changes that have taken effect if you buy a property. So we've continued to see prices in Portugal go up, even though the volume of units for sale has decreased dramatically. The number of units being sold is down by almost 25% year over year. So this kind of mirrors what's happening in the United States, where you've still seen a little bit of a bump overall across the country in the value of real estate being sold, but the number of units that are actually selling has dropped dramatically. And why is this? Because with increased interest rates here, it's made it unaffordable to purchase a home. So fewer and fewer people can actually afford to purchase a home. So you're seeing fewer and fewer transactions, and fewer people wanting to put their home up on the market for sale, which is why an ever-increasing number of homes that are actually being sold are new construction. And new construction, you're now seeing, is only increasing at about the same rate as resale homes. And so this is it's kind of a dramatic change in what's been present in the market for a long time now. So it's quite possible that, just like in Northern Europe, you're going to see houses reset in price here. It's just a very slow moving process. So we'll see what happens with that over the next year or two. And also in the home market, if you are in the lower tier of mortgages, they are offering new proposals and plans to help give you some aid during this period where interest rates are really high. So in Portugal, 90% of home loans are adjustable rate mortgages. And with these huge increases in interest rates, if you got a home loan 3 years ago, 4 years ago, you were told by the mortgage broker, hey, don't worry about it. We've had 1%, 1.5% interest rates here for the last 7-8 years. It's just going to continue to be very, very low. You don't have to worry about it. It's not going to affect your ability to afford a unit. Well, now you're finding what they're saying is over 70,000 families in Portugal are paying more than 50% of their net income towards their mortgage. This means it leaves very little money for other necessities and considerably less for any kind of disposable income spending on clothes, things that are non-essential items. If you go back to 2016, you'll find that almost 18% of home loans were distressed at that point. So they were non-performing loans. Almost 18% of home loans in 2016 were non-performing. That is crisis level numbers. And right now, non-performing loans in Portugal are barely over 3%. So they are being very proactive to try to make sure that people in the lower stratosphere of mortgages are able to continue to pay. So right now, if you have a loan in this lower tier, you are allowed to get a 30% reduction in the interest you're paying on your loan. Right now, I think it's for the next 4 years. You will have to make up that interest at the end of the contract. But what it does is reduce your monthly payments right now. And it's believed that interest rates will drop in the EU over the next few years. And as that happens, then the pressure that people are facing on their home loans will also dissipate, right? So the goal here is to make loans more affordable and also for people to continue to stay in their homes and pay the mortgages, and for these loans not to become non-performing loans. As an expat living in Portugal, we have private health care, private health insurance, and this is part of the requirements of coming into the country. And those rates for insurance that these increases of 20% or 60%, depending on the carrier, are the result of increased costs from the hospitals and clinics in what they charge, plus increased usage from people on the for health insurance. And in the same breath, you're also finding that you're going to have significantly less coverage for some events as well. The other medical related topic is COVID vaccines and flu vaccines. If you're under 60 like me, you cannot go to a pharmacy and get a vaccine for COVID or for the flu at this point. They will refer you to your local SWAD, which is your local health center, which is a public center. And if you're under 60, you need to have a note from a doctor explaining why you might want a COVID or a flu shot. and then you will be provided that. So it is a multi-step process if you want to get a vaccine here. So if you are living here and you're going back to the US, you might just want to pick those up when you're back in the US, because it's probably much easier to get those vaccines there than it is here. I'm wondering if at some point they won't open up vaccines to people under 60, but just right now, the only people who can get vaccines for these at this stage in the year are people over 60 at the pharmacies, and you have to have permission at your local health center to get that vaccine if you're under 60. Last video I talked to you about the end of NHR, which is a non-habitual residency tax scheme that was available in Portugal, but there were issues with it, and I understand why the government, these plans are really programs for the government to raise money more than they are for expats to come in to the country. So they have to look at what's best for the Portuguese people, and they're looking at alternative programs to NHR. If you want to see my last video, which discussed NHR, there's a link above, and then also I'll put a link at the end of the video to discuss it. But the great thing about this is that the government is looking at replacing NHR with another program. It may not be as strong as the current program was, and you see a lot of people rushing to try to get into the country, and this goes back to the first thing we mentioned, which was CEF, and the fact that there are 300,000 applications currently in progress that will have to be processed by the new organizations, and we'll see how quickly those can be done, and if people can get their appointments in their respective country and get their CEF appointments or their replacements, their appointments set up with the CEF replacement. If that can be done in a timely fashion, will they still be able to come in and enjoy this? And when will NHR actually go away? Because at this point it hasn't yet. So all those things are still question marks. And in a future video, I'll look at some of the other countries who have programs in place similar to what Portugal is looking at implementing. And we'll compare that against what countries like Spain and Italy and Greece, etc. are offering. So you'll kind of see the difference between where Portugal's going, how it mirrors a couple other countries in the programs they're currently offering, versus what other countries in Southern Europe are offering, and why you really have to stop and think about what works best for you. And it's just, again, sound advice, because before you move here, make sure that you take a look and you understand the financial implications of moving, and make sure you do your research so that you can align yourself as best possible with the tax rules in the US and the country you choose to move to as an expat, because in the US it's special around the world that we are still obligated for taxes in the United States. So this is Ted at Valley of the Dolly. I look forward to talking with you soon. Take care. Bye now.